Matt, we're talking today from Houston, Texas, which of course had the Super Bowl down here 2 days ago. We asked Lady Gaga to join us, but we had to have over a million attendees to have her even interested. So we're gonna have to do without that. So this webinar is about riding along in a prospect's mind as they search for your apartment. With our research, we'll show you today that the vast majority of prospects are gaining their first impression of your property on the internet, deciding whether to visit your property and ultimately to lease. We'll also demonstrate which review sites are the most influential, what pieces of the review are prospects paying attention to. We'll also explore which sites are the most viewed and what is it about reviews that interest prospects. I'm sure that you're participating in today's webinar to help wrap your arms around ratings and reviews. Today, we also suggest the best way to monitor your online reputation by demonstrating how we can predict the likelihood that prospects will visit your property based on your online reputation. Just think what an advantage for you to know who is going to win the Super Bowl before the game. Just like that, we can predict the willingness of prospects to visit your property. This study was done for the National Multi-Housing Council OPSTECH conference. It was done late last summer and fall. So let's start off with the numbers. We surveyed 2,715 prospects, and we asked them, do you use online ratings and reviews in your effort to search for an apartment? 83% said that they did. We did, before the survey, a focus group to get the idea of what prospects do in their task. What do they do in their internet search? What is their process that they go through to find a home? And so what we found was that they came up with 10 different tasks that they come up with. And so then we put those on our survey and ask prospects what order they take to do these. The first we found was that they search for the right location. Second, they search for the apartments in the desired location. They visit the apartment's website to gather information. They go online ratings and review sites for apartments. They drive or walk through the desired location to find an apartment. They look at ratings and reviews again. They narrow their apartment options by as much as possible. They schedule a tour of possible apartments. They choose the apartment to rent. And the focus group came up with talk to residents of apartments, but we found that that does not happen very much, if at all. So you can see here that of these 10 tasks that prospects talk about, and this, by the way, is the order that they said that they did them in, 5 out of 10 are online. And the top 2, if they're local, they probably would not necessarily need to search for apartment online or search the exact apartments in the location online. But still, the next 4, 3 of them are online activities. And it's all uploaded in the front. The activities are online in the very beginning. Notice also that ratings and reviews is done multiple times. So the next question that we asked them was, how much did ratings and reviews affect your decision to visit the property? And how much did ratings and reviews affect your final decision to lease? On a 10-point scale, to visit the property was 7.45, which is very strong. And to lease, the effect was 7.19. Now, there's some mitigating circumstances in regards to the leasing situation. Obviously, they want to visit the property, they want to talk to the leasing agent, they want to review the lease. So that number is naturally a little bit lower than the visit. The next question that we asked was, at what point do you utilize online ratings and reviews. As I was beginning my search, is at 43%. So what we're seeing is that they are picking the location. They're also checking out pricing, but 43% of the respondents to our survey said that they check ratings and reviews. Why is that? For convenience. They're trying to narrow down the number of properties that they need to go visit. We segmented all of these responses into 3 different behavior segments. The first is what we call starters. Starters are prospects that use ratings and reviews at the beginning of their search. That was the 43% I just talked about. The next is shortlisters. Prospects use ratings and reviews to shortlist their apartments. 28% chose narrowing down their search when they get down to 4 to 5 properties. 19% said between 2 and 3 properties. And then there's the enders, prospects that use ratings and reviews when making their final decision. They're down to their property, and now is when they use ratings and reviews. So let's go back and look at the effects. As you recall, I talked about the effects of visiting, the rate of ratings and reviews on visiting your property was 7.45 versus 7.1 on leasing. So in visiting, there's a stronger effect. But as you can go down to the very edge and look at the enders, the effect is much more on their leasing situation than on their visit. So now we're going to talk about the most influential aspects of when looking at different apartments on the review. And we're listing here what those different aspects are: star ratings, the number of reviews, the frequency of reviews. So take a look at this list for a second, because I'm going to ask you which aspects, in this poll, which aspects about ratings and reviews do prospects care most about? And you've got 5 responses. You can answer it on the screen. All right, we're just about done. Okay, let's take a look at the responses. 41% said star rankings. Next was the sentiment and the recentness of the reviews. So let's go look at what our survey said. You were right, the star rankings is what is the most influential aspect. The top 3 most impact aspects on a prospect's decision making are star rankings, relevancy of review or content, and the number of reviews. This changes based on when prospects focus on online ratings and reviews in their decision making process. While starters and shortlisters lean more toward the star rankings and number of reviews, the enders are motivated more by the content of the reviews. And as an aside, you can see men are more interested in sort of the Cliff Notes version, while women are more focused on the content. This is interesting also for this reason. If prospects are coming back to ratings and reviews multiple times, we can imply that as they get closer to leasing, they're more likely to act like an ender, where content becomes more important. And you can see that on the last column here about what enders answered. So the key takeaways on this first section are that prospects are motivated by different aspects of reviews based on when they focus on reviews in their apartment search process. The top 3 are star ratings, the relevancy or content of reviews, and the number of reviews. However, the closer prospects get to making a decision to lease, the more they focus on content of reviews. Now let's take a look we talked about in the very beginning the task and the order of the task. And so the first order of business for a prospect is to choose the neighborhood. And we wanted to find out what was the most impactful to them, which one were they most likely to click on first. You can see that the first four, this is a search in Indianapolis, Indiana for apartments. And the first four are an ad, and on this actual Google page, the next 5 are what's called organic. There's no ad to it. And so we asked the question, which of these are you most likely to click first? And this is what we found. That 26% clicked on the ad, and 24% clicked on the first organic site, which was apartments.com. So the question that occurred to us when we were, before we provided the survey out, was, is this because apartments.com's brand is so strong, or is it because of the positioning of the link? And so what we did every third survey is we switched the positioning of the link on number 5 to see if it had any effect. So on this second example, we put forrent.com in the 5th slot. And what we found then, that the responses changed a little bit, and the organic became the most important at 31%, 25% for the ad. And you can see the other responses that came in. On the last one, we put Zillow in the number 5 slot. And these were the responses for that at Zillow. Buying the number 1 spot is the smartest thing to do. The key takeaways on this, and there's no real surprise here, is that it pays to be first, paid or organic, that the majority of prospects click on the first organic search result, followed by the first advertised listing. And listings after the first slot, paid or organic, have diminishing returns. So we're continuing now down on our internet adventure. And now we're looking at ratings and reviews. What we wanted to find out was, based on ratings and reviews, which property are you most likely to visit? And so we put 2 Google screenshots back to back and had them take a look at this. And so I want you to just take a second to look at which ones you would be deciding on. Strictly based on reviews, which community are you more likely to visit? What we found was that 74% picked property number 1, 19% picked property number 2. And so the question is why did you pick this? Why did you pick apartment number 1 over apartment number 2? So we asked them. We gave them the screenshot again of the apartment that they picked, number 1, which was chosen 74% of the time. And we said, which rating site had the strongest impact on your decision to visit the property? And this is what we found out. 37% in this property here picked Google reviews. On the apartment number 2 that received 19% of the vote, we then asked them why. And what we found here was that apartmentratings.com was the main reason that they picked apartment number 2. The site with the most reviews took precedent over the Google reviews in this case. So we came back and put apartment number 3 and number 4. So take a look at these 2 screenshots from Google. Strictly based on reviews, which community are you more likely to visit? And what they told us was that apartment number 3 at 50% versus apartment number 4 at 40% was the one that they would choose. So we went back again and asked them, why is that? And showed them the screenshot of the property that they picked, which is apartment number 3 at 50%. As you can see, apartment guide in the number 3 spot was the one that they decided by 45%. And so we moved on to apartment number 4. And we asked them, and 40% of that one, and so we asked them, well, why was that? And so gave them the screenshot of apartment number 4, and they picked Google reviews at 35%. So as you've witnessed, prospects have chosen different review sites to focus on in making their decision. Prospects are subconsciously establishing a metric in their head while comparing ratings and reviews of property. Through our research, we've been able to quantify that metric by focusing on star rankings and reviews and calculating the relative strength by comparing properties. We've established ORA as that metric, Online Reputation Assessment. It's a single score that quantifies the online reputation of over 63,000 properties that we track from all review sites on a monthly basis, scoring between 1 and 100. So as you can see here, going back to the numbers that we looked at before on apartment number 1 versus apartment number 2, apartment number 1 was chosen 74% of the time and had an ORA score of 70, versus apartment number 2, which was chosen 19% of the time and has a 60 ORA score. Apartment number 3 was chosen 50% of the time with an 80 ORA score, and their online reputation assessment score on number 4 was 70 at 40%. So now I want you to take a good look at apartment number 5 and number 6, and I'm going to ask the question as we hold the screen for a second. Which property do you think the prospects chose to visit here? Number 5, take a good look at it, and number 6. We'll hold this for about 5 seconds so you can take a good look at it. So the question is apartment number 5 or apartment number 6? Which property do you think the prospects chose to visit? We're about halfway there with responses. Keep on looking at it. So as you can see, you who have responded to this concur with our study, and that is that you yourselves have subconsciously established a ranking in your mind and chosen the property with the higher score. Apartment 5 was at 86%. You had it at 84%. This ORA score on that property was 90. And apartment number 6 was at 9%. You had it at 16%. The ORA score was 80. But again, the prospects don't know what the ORA scores are behind the scenes. We asked them, which rating site had the strongest impact on your decision to visit the property? And this is the responses that they came up with. Reviews from the web was at 27%, and Google reviews was at 28%. That was on apartment number 5 that was chosen 86% of the time. On apartment number 6, chosen 9% of the time, reviews in the bottom right corner under the Google column were number one at 32%. Overall, in our survey, 70% of prospects decided to visit a property with a higher online reputation. 70%. The key takeaways with regard to rating sites and the most influence on a prospect's decision to visit a property, Google reviews has a very strong influence. The only exceptions when star rankings or volume of reviews in Google for a property is low, and then prospects are more impacted by the rating site with the highest number of reviews. To finish out our survey, we asked about the effects of property websites. In your opinion, how effective are reviews for a property on that property's website? All respondents had a 6.37 on a 10-point scale, which is somewhat strong, but not extremely strong. There may be some feeling that there's some skewing going on in regards to the rating and review on a property's website. Now, prospects are very interested in getting information, but they're not, as of yet, as interested as posting information. As you can see here, 66% answered the question, have you posted a review of an apartment community online? 66% said no, they hadn't. 30% said that they had. Now, we asked this same question in 2012. Only 19% said they had posted. So in that time frame, it's up 58%. Now let's take a look at this screen here, and we asked the question, assuming you were considering this apartment as a possible place to rent, please rank the sites in order of impact, highest to lowest. Each one will have on your decision to rent here. Now, we're going to ask you this question. Which review site do you think had the most influence on the prospect's decision to rent? But take your time and please answer that question. Okay, so as you can see, Google was number one at 62%, 22% was apartment ratings. One of the things I want to point out here is that you'll notice that the star ratings and the number of reviews is the same. We were asking this question so that we would see about branding versus the number of reviews or star rankings, so it's not to skew it. But what our survey showed was that Google was number one at 61%. You had it at number one. But we get a little bit different response from our prospects. Apartments.com was number two. Apartment ratings, which you had second, was number three. Number four was the property website. 5 was Yelp. 6 was rent.com. And 7 was Facebook. So our review site observations are this. We've been analyzing the dynamic landscape of review sites since 2012. Most recently, Google ratings and reviews outshine all other rating sites. Apartments.com is number 2, followed by apartmentratings.com. Yelp dropped from being the most trusted site in 2012 to the second slot in 2015 into the fifth spot in 2016. ApartmentRatings.com has scaled upward since 2012. It was in the sixth spot in 2012. So we're going to finish up with some conclusions. I'll be happy to take your questions. Your online reputation makes all the difference, as prospects turn to ratings and reviews more than once in their apartment search. Star ratings, the relevancy or content of reviews, and the number of reviews are the top three aspects of reviews that motivate prospects the most. The emphasis on these factors changes depending on when prospects bring ratings into their decision making. As they get closer to making a decision to lease, content becomes more important. Google reviews rules, followed by apartments.com and apartment ratings. But remember, review sites landscape is very dynamic. 3 years ago, Google reviews wasn't even on the list. 70% of prospects choose to visit a property with a better online reputation as quantified by Aura scores. So I'm happy to take questions now. So the first question is there a way to break down these stats by region? And that's a great question. We did this survey for OpsTech. We had 2,700 responses. We are beginning to put together a deep dive into the information that we've gotten, and we'll be having a fairly massive survey done this summer, which we can break that down for you. I think that, and so if you're interested in companies interested in participating in that, it is a free thing. We obviously need to get names of prospects or residents at your property that we handle with utmost strictest confidentiality. Only use those for this survey, and so if you're interested in participating in that so that we can get bigger numbers to look at the regions, my guess is that there are some on the west and east coast stronger rating sites that more people go to. Aura, of course, mitigates that across the country, but it'd be very interesting to dig deeper into that. Is it possible to rank my entire portfolio rather than each community individually? That's a question that really kind of boils over into a sales situation for us, and I'd rather not do that here on this call. But you can certainly check our website or contact us. We can dig a little bit deeper into that question for you as well. Any advice when responding to online reviews, positive and negative alike? I'm really not an expert on that. We're coming out with a video 5-series program that's going to be done by one of the leading speakers in the industry in mid-February on exactly that. We're more experts on what's going on data-wise with them and how to monitor it. And I could only be telling you stuff that I've heard secondhand, but on responding. So keep an eye out for in the next 2 weeks some how-tos on managing your reputation that would be more along the lines of an operational reaction to it. So what is the market share of review sites? That's right down our alley. We did an analysis in December. Apartment ratings is at 80% of all reviews. Apartments.com is at 72. Google is at 71. Facebook is at 43. Yelp is at 40. Rent.com is at 11. And after that, it is single digits. So I'm going to go through that just one more time so that you can write it down if you don't. Apartmentratings.com is at 80. Apartments.com is at 72. Google's at 71. Facebook is at 43. Yelp is at 40. And Rent.com is at 11. And again, this may be thrown off and skewed by different regions. They may be stronger and certain not. Any recommendations on getting residents to leave positive reviews where you want them without incentivizing them for it? Well, incentivizing them for it is a pretty bad idea. We just saw on apartment ratings the other day, kind of a, I would say, a notice that that a certain company was doing that, and they actually pointed the people looking at apartmentsratings.com to that company and showed the actual quote unquote advertisement for that. So that's not a very good idea. But certainly survey companies are able to provide that kind of information from doing surveys and asking respondents to move forward to posting reviews. So that's a good place to start. Other than that, I think you'll find that in the video coming out in 2 weeks on how to manage your reviews and your reputation. Clearly, having a relationship, the manager having a relationship with residents at the end of the day is going to be helpful. I believe that the foundation of getting good reviews is having good customer service. So, those are some pieces of advice on that. So the question now is, do results differ if using other search engines rather than Google search engine? They probably differ. They potentially could differ in where the rating site is, but we go so far down into Google that we are confident that we are covering every single review site. When we calculate horror scores, when we've been providing the side-by-side look at both the properties, we made sure that every single review site was involved in that. So, is there a different outcome depending on whether a property is either an A or a B property? That's a great question. That's something that we will be digging into a little bit further in this survey that we're going to be doing in the summer. Jay Turner does surveys for the apartment industry, and it's interesting to find out who is usually the strongest in customer satisfaction, and it can be anywhere from a skyscraper in Boston to a small property in a small town in Florida or outside of Dallas. It really depends. Certainly the expectation is different for residents when they move into a B property, and the question really is on satisfaction or online reputation is that expectation being met or exceeded? I can say that the top property in the country is a skyscraper in Boston They have the best online reputation in the country, but that's not necessarily the case. A garden-style property in Houston can also have a staff that meets or exceeds expectation, and that's always got to help. How does responding to reviews affect the decision of prospects? Well, the actual response does not affect their star rankings or the number of reviews. But again, what we talked about here in this session was that different things affect people as they get closer to making the decision. So in the very beginning, the emphasis really is, I want to go visit this property. I want to know the star rankings. I want to know the number of reviews. But as it gets to be more serious, people are paying more attention to what's on the review site, and they're digging into content. That's a great position that people who are seeing responses to reviews will be able to gather more information to make a decision to lease. So I would say that it's much more important when they're getting closer to lease about making their decision to lease rather than the very beginning. So which sites do you track to calculate the Aura scores? We're tracking them all. And so there's about 15 now. We started off with 2 6 years ago. But apartment ratings, apartments.com, Yelp, Google, rent.com, Facebook, Yellow Pages, Apartment Guide, For Rent, Yahoo. We're tracking them all. We have yet to find a site that we are not tracking, and if we do, we will add to it. We're monitoring. The question is, how many properties are you monitoring? We're monitoring over 63,000 properties across the country on a monthly basis. Do we track the reviews on Facebook? The answer to that is yes, we do. But we do have also as well some concerns about those reviews and have certain conditions around them. We see that they many times are, there's no filter around who's responding and putting them in. Many cases we'll see a huge batch of them come in at the same time that are very positive. So we have our eyes on that. And if you really sort of want the conditions of that and what the conditions are for Facebook to be allowed, which we are allowing them in the majority of cases, you can certainly email me at jbatdorf at jturnerresearch.com, jbatdorf at jturnerresearch.com, and I'll be happy to go into a little bit more detail about the conditions. We do not want the Aura scores or the online reputation to increase based on loading up from a certain review site. Do companies pay for Aura score report? No and yes. The report that we have is something that we put together for companies. There's a fee for that. The score, no. We're tracking 63,000 properties across the country without there being any payment whatsoever. So anytime that you can go to our website, jturnerresearch.com, to find out what your individual properties scores are very quickly, very easily, for free. And any of the rankings that you see that have come out recently about the top 1% or the top management companies or the top properties in the state is all done through our review every month of these 63,000 properties. Do we have any more questions? looks like we're running out of it. I really appreciate your time, and again, you can download this presentation. You can go to our website to find out more about Aura and how it comes up. We also have the study that we did for the National Multi-Housing Council, the OPSTEC conference. Thank you very much for your time, and have a great evening.